Devon Archer says Hunter Biden, quote, called his dad after Burisma pressured for, quote, help from D.C. from investigations in 2015. Hello, this is Robert Romano, Vice President of Public Policy with Americans for Limited Government, dailytorch.com. Hit that subscribe button. Today, we're going to be talking about former Hunter Biden business partner Devon Archer's testimony to the House Oversight Committee on July 31. It's, I think, a bombshell. The Republicans have actually been downplaying, I think, what's in this testimony. Part of the reasons for that is we're going to get into the fact that Devon Archer was not privy to the actual contents of a phone call that Hunter Biden made to Washington, D.C. in December of 2015 at the Burisma Board of Directors meeting in Dubai, United Arab Emirates. This was on December 4, 2015, thereabouts. And so, and this is just days before Joe Biden is going to give a speech to the Ukrainian parliament where he's talking about overhauling the prosecutor general's office. And so I think House Republicans are, I think, kind of carefully putting their case together as it relates to what Hunter Biden was up to with Burisma. And the fact that the thing that Devon Archer is testifying to, though, is that they were repeatedly asking for help because of governmental investigations into Burisma and into Burisma CEO Mykola Zlochevsky. And this is what they were asking Hunter Biden for help from, and he makes the call. Now, according to Devon Archer, he was calling his dad. Now, we don't actually have video of the hearing, and there may be a public hearing later, and then we'll play a clip for you then. But what we do have is the testimony as transcribed by the House of Representatives. And I wanted to get into this. They're starting to talk about a board of directors meeting that's going to be in Dubai. People would fly in on December 3rd, and they'd get to the board of directors meeting by December 4th. And so this is the Q&A with Devon Archer. So Q is a member of Congress and A is Archer giving the answer. Do you recall the board of directors meeting in Dubai? Yes. Before going to Dubai, do you remember going to Kiev in Ukraine? He says he doesn't remember. I don't remember. And he says, oh, it's not a trick question. He says, if you don't remember, it's okay. I'm sorry, I don't remember if we stopped there. So he doesn't remember if he went to Ukraine right before they went to Dubai. So Republicans are trying to track that down. So who's at the meeting? They go through some of the people there, including Mykola Zlochevsky, Veda Pozharsky, who's the CFO, Hunter Biden, and some other executives. And there were two Cyprus board members that I can't remember their names. So we're going to skip ahead here a little bit because they say we're going to have a board dinner. Do you always have board dinners? Blah, blah, blah. Where were you? Did you go out for drinks? No, we went out for coffee at the Four Seasons in Dubai. So I just want to get to the part where this is relevant. I'll say after dinner at the Four Seasons, did Mykola Zlochevsky or Vadim Pozharsky ask Hunter Biden to make any phone calls? Yes, though I was not a party to that phone call. What was the request? The request was, I think they were getting pressure and they requested Hunter, help them with some of that pressure. What pressure? Government pressure on their, government pressure from Ukrainian government investigations into Mykola Zlochevsky, etc. But it wasn't like not a specific request. It was just, we were sitting there at the Four Seasons having, coffee, and there was Mykola. There were some of the managers for the Four Seasons who managed the property, that property, Vadim. So it wasn't like it was not like a specific meeting. When you say pressure from the government at this time, were you aware that Viktor Shokin, he's the prosecutor general in Ukraine at this time, was investigating Burisma? To the best whether it was Shokin, there was a lot of pressure initially. There was several pressure issues. It was kind of a theme of Burisma. There was capital tied up in London, 23 million pounds. There was, a U.S. visa denied and then a Mexico visa denied. And so Shokin wasn't specifically on my radar as being an individual that was that was targeting him. But yes, there was constant pressure, and it was like whack-a-mole in regards to the pressures that had to resolve. Jim Jordan jumps in. The request from Mykola Zlochevsky and Vadim Pozharskyi to Mr. Biden, and or if you said it was you, the request for help for whom to deal with the request for help for whom to deal with what pressure. The request, basically the request is like, can DC help? But there were not, I'm not going to, there were not, it wasn't like, there wasn't specific, can the big guy help? It's always this amorphous, can we get help in DC? Jordan, the request from help from the U.S. government to deal with the pressure they were under from their prosecutor, and that entailed the freezing of assets at the London bank and other things that were going on in Ukraine. Archer says, correct. Jordan says, okay. Biggs jumps in. I think you might have just clarified. I just want to make sure. Archer says, sure. When you say DC help, like they said, we could use some DC help. I'm not asking what you think I'm asking what you interpreted that to mean. So here Archer's going to talk about lobbying. He says, well, I'm still learning about it, but it seems like really a lot like at the end of the day, lobbying, soft lobbying help, firm lobbying help. I mean, there was constant pressure on them. And there were a lot that's on Burisma. And there were various service providers hired and people working on, help in DC. A lot of power is obviously flexed here. So that was a constant, whether it was putting out fires or helping expand Biggs. So why do you think they were asking Mr. Biden for DC help if they had, I'm assuming what you're saying is they might have had some kind of lobbying group on retainer, perhaps? Archer says, yes. Biggs. So why do you think they were asking Hunter Biden for DC help? I mean, why? Says Archer. Biggs. What did you take away from that? Archer says, well, he was a lobbyist and an expert, and obviously he carried, a very powerful name. So I think that's what they were asking for. They also, there was a firm, Blue Star Strategies, that was hard to be, kind of I don't know if they were a lobbying firm or just strategic advisory. It's still unclear what the difference is, but that was part of the mix. But it was a high pressure environment, and there was constant requests for help from DC. Now by Mandolfo. Question: what did Hunter Biden do after he was given that request? Archer: listen, I did not hear this phone call, but he called his dad. How do you know that? Question: this is a bombshell. He called his dad because I think Vadim Pozharskyi told me, but again, it's unclear. I just know that there was a call that happened there, and I was not privy to it. What did Vadim tell you about the call? Just that we called DC. But he didn't, again, it's not like there was not, oh, we've got all our problems solved kind of, revelation. I was not on that side of the equation and kind of working on the lobbying side of the business. When Vadim told you this, where were you? I was, basically, then we drove back to the hotel I was staying at. Who's we? Me, Vadim Pozharskyi, and Mykola Zlochevsky. Was it during that drive back that Vadim told you that Hunter Biden called VP Biden at the time? It would have been at some point there or after, maybe the next day. Again, we spent, on a board trip where you travel with people from all over the world. We spent 3 days together. So the exact time I can't say, but that's what happened. Okay, so we're going to, at this point, leave the testimony. That this is very, I think, critical to our understanding of what the Bidens, particularly Hunter Biden, was up to when he's tasked to make a phone call to DC. Archer's understanding of that, and he's giving kind of hearsay. We don't have Vadim Pozharskyi here to say that was Joe Biden on the phone call, or Mykola Zlochevsky. They were the ones on the phone call with Hunter Biden when he's calling to DC. What Archer can testify to is that the call had to do with the governmental investigations into Burisma and into Mykola Zlochevsky, the CEO. The company had 23 million pounds freezed in London. Eventually that gets freed up. And then there's a new prosecutor general who's going to be put into place after Viktor Shokin gets fired. And we know very famously that Joe Biden bragged about Viktor Shokin, the Ukrainian prosecutor general, fired. And there he is at the Rada. But let's listen to this just one more time. I know you guys are probably tired of hearing this particular clip, but I think it's very important.
Do I think I think the Donbass has potential to be able to be solved, but it takes two things. One of those things is missing now, and that is I'm desperately concerned about the backsliding on the part of Kyiv in terms of corruption. They made, I mean, I'll give you one concrete example. I was, not but it just happened to be, that was the assignment I got. I got all the good ones. So I got Ukraine. And I remember going over convincing our team or others to convincing us that we should be providing for loan guarantees. And I went over, I guess, the 12th, 13th time to Kyiv, and I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to the press conference. I said, no, I said, we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said, I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was about 6 hours. I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Oh, son of a bitch. Got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid at the time. Well, they made some genuine, substantial changes institutionally and with people. But one of the three institutions.
So there you go. They made genuine reform changes. And again, we've looked at this in the last time I went live with you. But I want to remind you because it's critical to this case, and we want to be able to put it together with this testimony. This was a readout of Vice President Biden's call with President Petro Poroshenko of Ukraine on May 13, 2016, where Biden's description of the firing being tied to the loan guarantees is confirmed by, this is the Obama White House or Obama White House archives.gov. And this is the readout. It says the vice president spoke today with Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko. The vice president welcomed the appointment of a new prosecutor general as an important first step to bringing much needed reform to the office of the prosecutor general. The vice president also commended legislative change that will be set up an independent office of the inspector general in the office of the prosecutor general and allow prosecutions to begin against Yanukovych era officials. The vice president informed President Poroshenko that the United States was prepared now to move forward with the signing of the third $1 billion loan guarantee agreement, which will support continued progress on Ukrainian reforms. So this is confirming by the Obama White House that this phone call took place. It was actually a YouTube video. A Ukrainian lawmaker had put forward what was said to be the transcript of this phone call. Now, where did he get it? Russian intelligence or something like that? That was the accusation. Treasury ends up putting sanctions on that particular Ukrainian lawmaker. The video actually ends up getting removed from YouTube. It was because they had terminated the account of the uploader. It looks like there might have been a little censorship there. There were AP news stories at the time about this. But there was this phone call. And I don't know why they bothered to suppress the YouTube version of it. If there's this readout that confirms that, confirms that there was this phone call, that they discussed the new prosecutor general, and then the firing. So we've covered Joe Biden speaking at Council on Foreign Relations. That was in 2018. But just a few days after the December Dubai meeting in December 2015, December 4, 2015, Dubai, United Arab Emirates, Biden is speaking in front of the Ukrainian parliament. And he's talking about the Prosecutor General's office and overhauling it. So let's take a listen to this one more time. I think this is very important as well, because this is just a few days after this phone call goes to Washington, D.C. about all the trouble Burisma is having with the Prosecutor General's office. Take a listen to this.
But I can tell you, you cannot name me a single democracy in the world where the cancer of corruption is prevalent. You cannot name me one. They are thoroughly inconsistent. And it's not enough to set up a new anti-corruption bureau and establish a special prosecutor fighting corruption. The Office of the General Prosecutor desperately needs reform. The judiciary should be overhauled. The energy sector needs to be competitive, ruled by market principles, not sweetheart deals. It's not enough to push through laws to increase transparency with regard to official sources of income. Senior elected officials have to remove all conflicts between their business interests and their government responsibilities.
Political leaders, elected leaders need to remove all potential conflicts of interest from their business interests and their governmental responsibilities. This is 3 days after Hunter Biden is calling to Washington, D.C. because of his Biden family name to get help for Burisma, which is under investigation by the Prosecutor General, who has since testified in European court. Victor Shokin, he was the fired Prosecutor General that Biden was speaking of. And he says he got fired because of the investigation into Burisma. And we'll go through his transcript of what he stated one more time, because I think it's very important for context as well. In the affidavit, Shokin testified, quote, "The truth is that I was forced out because I was leading a wide-ranging corruption probe into Burisma Holdings, a natural gas firm active in Ukraine, and Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, was a member of the board of directors. On several occasions, President Poroshenko asked me to have a look at the case against Burisma and to consider the possibility of winding down the investigative actions in respect of this company, but I refused to close the investigation." Now, was that the problem that Burisma was having? This was in 2019, September of 2019, at the height of the Trump impeachment, because of the phone call that Trump had with then President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. This was on July 25th, 2019. If you go back in time, that's when Special Counsel Robert Mueller, who had closed his Russiagate investigation. He had found no conspiracy between Trump and Russia to hack the DNC and John Podesta and to put the emails onto WikiLeaks. No case that could be prosecuted. And so Trump's calling up Zelensky, and he has a few words with him about Hunter Biden and about Joe Biden. If you could speak to him, that would be great. Former ambassador, et cetera, et cetera. The other thing, there's a lot of talk about Biden's son. This is Trump talking to Zelensky, that Biden stopped the prosecution, and a lot of people want to find out about that. So whatever you can do with the attorney general would be great. Biden went around bragging that he stopped the prosecution. So if you could look into that, it sounds horrible to me. So Donald Trump got impeached by the House of Representatives. He was acquitted by the U.S. Senate over this phone call because he was asking about this particular matter, and that it would be something he wanted to get more information about it. Now, was that because Biden was his political opponent? I don't think it matters. He's carrying on foreign discourse with a foreign leader. He's the president of the United States. He can ask Zelensky whatever he wants. That's a political question with which Trump has discretion. In any event, Zelensky actually affirms what Trump is saying. He says, "I wanted to tell you about the prosecutor." So he's been meaning to talk to Trump about the prosecutor. First of all, I understand and I'm knowledgeable about the situation since we've won the absolute majority in our parliament. The next prosecutor general will be 100% my person, my candidate, who will be approved by the parliament and will start as a new prosecutor general in September. He or she will look into the situation specifically to the company that you mentioned in this issue. The issue of the investigation of the case is actually the issue of making sure to restore the honesty. So we will take care of that and we'll work on the investigation of the case. On top of that, I would kindly ask you if you have any additional information that you can provide to us. It would be very helpful for the investigation. So we asked for help for the investigation to make sure that we administer justice in our country with regard to the ambassador to the United States from Ukraine. As far as I recall, her name, Ivanovich, it was Ivanovich. It was great that you were the first one who told me that she was a bad ambassador, because I agree with you 100%. Her attitude towards me was far from the best, as she admired the previous president and she was on his side. She would not accept me as a new president well enough. So Zelensky's saying there's a problem with this investigation. If you have any more information, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So according to Zelensky, there's substance to what Trump was saying as well. So these are, kind of multiple threads here. And this wouldn't be, kind of like, oh, why is the United States telling Ukraine what to investigate? And that's just standard fare. That's exactly what Joe Biden was doing when he was speaking in front of the Rada, the Ukrainian parliament, in December 9th, 2015, just a few days after Hunter Biden's calling Washington, D.C. On Burisma's behalf for help to do with their investigations. If you go to Victoria Nuland's testimony before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee in October of 2015, a few months before this phone call even took place, and a few months before the speech, she too is talking about prosecutors and the need for prosecutorial reform in Ukraine. She says, a new National Anti-Corruption Bureau is being stood up and will work with the new special anti-corruption prosecutor once the latter is appointed. The U.S., EU, and UK help with U.S., EU, and UK help. New local prosecutors are being hired. Old ones are tested and retrained, and all will now submit to periodic performance evaluations to root out corruption and malfeasance. Key steps towards these reforms. They say they want to clean up endemic corruption throughout the government and society at every level, to stabilize the economy, to break the hold of corrupt state enterprises and oligarchs, and to reform the judicial system. Key steps to the reform include procurement and revenue management reform in the gas sector, and unbundling of services, along with the restructuring of Naftogaz by Ukraine's deadline of June 2016. She says, Nuland, like Ukraine's police force, the Prosecutor General's office has to be reinvented as an institution that serves the citizens of Ukraine rather than ripping them off. That means it must investigate and successfully prosecute corruption and asset recovery cases, including locking up dirty personnel in the Prosecutor General's office itself. The newly created Inspector General's office within Ukraine prosecution service must be able to work independently and effectively without political or judicial interference. And the government must appoint the NABU anti-corruption prosecutor as soon as possible in order to start investigating these crimes. So here's Victoria Nuland, State Department official, telling the Senate that Ukraine needs to work on these reforms. She, in other venues, has testified about the loan guarantees. There were several packages of loans that were going to Ukraine. We know from the White House readout that these loans were indeed tied to prosecutorial reform. We also know that this is the readout of the, and we could probably get the transcript, not us, but Congress could probably get the transcript for that from the archives. Let's get the transcript of the Petro Poroshenko Biden call from May 3rd, 2016. I think it'll have a lot of relevance to what House Speaker Kevin McCarthy is saying is going to be an impeachment inquiry. And I think with Devon Archer's testimony that he called his dad right there, he called his dad, that there's more than enough probable cause with which to proceed with that just on this basis alone. I think they should also consider looking at the investigation and prosecutions, multiple former President Donald Trump by Joe Biden's Justice Department, and they're going at their political opponent in the upcoming election. Potentially, Trump's leading all the Republican polls in 2024, and Joe Biden's trying to lock him up. And so that I think that there's an abuse of power there as well. And so that's something to look at. But the fact is that Hunter Biden's business partner, Devon Archer, is saying that Hunter called his dad in December of 2015 to help, to talk about Burisma and to get help for the investigations that were ongoing. According to Archer, he was privy to the fact that there was a call. He doesn't know what was said on the call. He doesn't know if he spoke to his father or not. He's going off of what Vadim Posarski had told him about the phone call. How did it go in D.C.? And it was a phone call to Joe Biden himself to do with Burisma. And then Joe Biden is making a speech at the Ukrainian parliament like 3 days later about overhauling the prosecutor general's office. Now, again, the defense will be that's something that the State Department was already working on. But at that point, Joe Biden had been appointed kind of like a czar or kind of a Roman provincial governor of Ukraine by Barack Obama. And that had been in place since 2013. And in fact, the person he was supposed to be speaking with was Viktor Yanukovych. Biden's the one who gets Viktor Yanukovych thrown out of office. He urges him to leave following the Maidan protests in Kiev, and particularly in February of 2014. And so the United States pushes Yanukovych out of office. Russia responds in kind. They take Crimea. And then the civil war begins in Ukraine, and particularly in the eastern Donbass provinces, leading 8 years later to Russia's ultimate invasion of Ukraine in February of 2022, now when Biden is president. Biden has a lot to do with Ukraine, a lot to do with why we're in this war right now, kind of vis-a-vis as a proxy, with Ukraine as a proxy for NATO and the United States against Russia right now. Biden was instrumental not only in pushing, Yanukovych out of power, but his son was, kind of involved thereafter. So they knock over the government. And then what's Biden doing? He's having his family go over there to form these business relationships. And he gets, it's the Biden name that gets Hunter Biden onto the board of directors at Burisma. And then suddenly there's some kind of payback going on, according to House Republicans. And according to this FD 1023, right here, the FD 1023 that was filed June 30th, 2020. This is what was released by Chuck Grassley, Senator, and U.S. House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer. This is a document from June 30, 2020. And the confidential human source, again, this is hearsay. So is this enough to go on to bring in impeachment, probable cause? Okay, yeah, when you couple it with the Archer testimony, that seems to corroborate parts of the story that's in here, sure. But I think that this is kind of critical. According now, it could maybe Archer's the source, and so this is like a single source, and you've already can account for what's in the 1023. If so, I don't know why he's not. Wouldn't he would be testifying to the rest of the stuff that's in here. So I don't think they think that Archer is the source. But this is also in 2020 that the source is going to the FBI. And by then, Victor Shokin's already a well-known entity. The fact that he was fired, because we'd just been through the Trump impeachment. This could have been concocted on a post hoc basis with some threads of truth referring to things that had actually happened. So the evidence for the bribery charge, there's a quote here that Zlevkesky is supposedly telling the confidential human source in Vienna, Austria, quote, it cost $5 million to pay one Biden and $5 million to another Biden. That doesn't prove it, because for one, you don't have Zlevkesky testifying to that effect. So would he admit to bribing people? I mean, that would be pretty incriminating. Just from he would have to confess to crimes that he had committed to bribe then the vice president of the United States. I think that's probably pretty illegal. It doesn't matter which country you're in. But according to the source, he recalled the meeting took place in Vienna around the time Joe Biden made a public statement about former Ukraine Prosecutor General Viktor Shokin being corrupt and that he should be fired, removed from office. CHS told Zlevkesky that due to Shokin's investigation into Burisma, which was made public at this time, it would have a substantial negative impact on Burisma's prospective initial public offering in the United States. Zlevkesky replied something to the effect of, quote, don't worry, Hunter will take care of all those issues through to his dad. So once again, there's the confidential human source says he'll take care of those issues through his dad. There's Devon Archer saying that Hunter Biden, he didn't hear the phone call, but he called his dad. Archer seems to believe that indeed, yeah, he called his father to help out with Burisma in these investigations. Victor Shokin, once again, has testified about this in a European court. We've read that statement. We've gone through the readout. And I think we've covered all the major threads here. But yeah, I mean, this is a real, I think, problem. If Archer's testimony, and yeah, I don't know if this was under oath. This was a closed door meeting. But I think the testimony, coupled with the FD 1023, Kevin McCarthy's going to have to make, he's going to have to move forward with this. I don't see how he would kind of say, oh, well, we don't have enough evidence to go on here. This is more than you usually have for an impeachment. You look at the articles of impeachment against Donald Trump over carrying on foreign relations with Zelensky and looking into an investigation that was actually real, that had actually happened, and that Biden was bragging about getting this official, fired in Ukraine. And so Trump, as the president of the United States, just like Obama when he's president, he can push, and Biden's the kind of Ukraine czar or whatever from the United States point of view, to push for the prosecutor general's office to be reinvented, to look at particular types of investigations, to go against former Yanukovych officials, etc. I think that's essentially what that's what they were looking at. They wanted to, go back in and Yanukovych is gone now, but there's still a lot of corrupt officials from the Yanukovych administration. You need to get them. You know who one of those officials was Mykola Zlevkesky. He was a ecology minister in the Yanukovych administration. After the government was overthrown, he had to flee the country, along with Yanukovych. And then it wasn't until years later. So Shokin gets fired by Joe Biden, and then, by Petro Poroshenko at Joe Biden's behest, leveraging an International Monetary Fund loan. But then after the firing, another prosecutor general was put into place, Lutsenko, who eventually concludes his investigations, and then Zlevkesky is able to return to Ukraine. So he had been in exile, but then he's no longer in exile. The Ukrainian parliament takes him off the most wanted list. So if there was a relationship, it paid off. The prosecutions that they were worried about did not occur. The funds in London, the 23 million pounds, those were eventually released. So the things turned around for Zlevkesky and Burisma after Shokin was gone. We had shown last time the New York Times piece that they were saying that Shokin was soliciting bribes, and I don't know, maybe they found that annoying or something like that. But it kind of lays a predicate for why Shokin had to go. Either he was soliciting bribes and they didn't want to have to pay the bribes to Shokin, or he was actually looking into this, looking into it as he had stated in his testimony, and that he was getting pushback from Poroshenko to conclude the investigation. So kind of he said on that, but that either way could be a corrupt reason for getting Shokin removed. If Burisma is paying Hunter Biden and then Hunter Biden's influencing his father, and this is helping to animate U.S. foreign policy when Joe Biden's giving a speech to the Ukrainian parliament. And this had been going on for several months. So just because Devon Archer is privy to this phone call in December of 2015, he also stated that there was constant pressure. We'll go back through the last part of his testimony here. He says he called his dad. The request, I think, was they were getting pressure, and they requested Hunter, help them out with some of that pressure. And government pressure, from Ukrainian government investigations into Burisma and CEO Mykola Zlevkesky. So the Ukrainian investigations into Burisma and Zlevkesky were being led at that time by Victor Shokin. So he knows about the investigations. He doesn't need to know if Victor Shokin is the one leading those investigations. Burisma was getting trouble from all different directions. We mentioned the 23 million pounds. And that there was a whack-a-mole approach. He also added that this was a high-pressure environment and there were constant requests for help. constant request for help. And then as a result of that, Hunter Biden called his dad. And why would this have been the only time he would have called his father about that? That's a really good question. I think there was already established that Hunter Biden was talking to his father almost every day. Joe Biden wanted to say he had nothing to do with his son's business dealings. He never discussed business with his son. Well, that's a strange way of putting it. Because you could say, oh, how's business or something like that. But he's trying to say, oh, there was no improper relationship, because at the time he was lecturing the Ukrainian parliament about this. But I think that there's more than enough to go on here. This is, I think, a pretty dire matter from the perspective of the Bidens, both politically and as it relates to the House's investigation. They're going to get to the bottom of this as much as they can. Read as much of this into the record. I don't think the point of the exercise is that they're going to get a conviction out of the U.S. Senate. What traditionally happens in impeachments is all of the president's party will vote not guilty. Much of the opposition party will vote that the president's guilty, whether the evidence was strong or not. But they are probably going to go in this direction. In the call, the IMF loans were directly tied to the reforms at the Prosecutor General's office, which meant new leadership. Shokin had to go. And it happened after Burisma asked Hunter Biden for help with Shokin's investigations. This seems like it could be the probable cause for the impeachment inquiry that House Speaker Kevin McCarthy has stated may be imminent. Stay tuned. This is Robert Romano, Vice President of Public Policy with Americans for Limited Government, dailytorch.com. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications, and have a good day. But first, we're going to go to the chat here and see what you guys are saying. I'm sure that you're upset that about what is in this transcript by Devon Archer, but it's good that we have the transcript. Dan Goldman was complaining, we don't have the transcript. And it's like, why were you complaining? I mean, he was actually trying to say, he was bolstering Devon Archer as a witness, saying, oh, he exonerated Joe Biden. I don't know why you're puffing up the witness who says that Hunter Biden called his dad with Burisma's problems with investigations, governmental in Ukraine, specific to the CEO who was on the phone call with Hunter Biden. I mean, that's pretty darn remarkable, if you ask me. Let's see. We have Jackie Rusky, exposed Biden crime family, impeach this corrupt administration. I think that's where this is headed. Brian Green, Hunter is our president, it seems. No. Hunter Biden, this wasn't even during Joe Biden's term as president. This was when he was vice president. This is from back in 2015. And this is now included allegations of potential bribery that were made to the FBI. I think that that's something that Congress, of course, they would look into that. That if Congress, they conducted oversight on the Russiagate investigation, because there was an FBI investigation into the supposed Russian interference in the elections and the supposed alleged, turns out to be false charges of conspiracy with the Trump campaign. And it was Robert Mueller, special counsel, none other, who actually exonerated Trump on the question of conspiracy with Russia. In fact, no member of the Trump campaign was found to have conspired with Russia to hack the DNC and John Podesta emails and put them onto WikiLeaks. And at the same time, Congress was conducting oversight. That was one of the potential threads I think that Democrats would have wanted to impeach Trump on. But guess what happened? Bob Mueller didn't find it. And he told everyone he didn't find it, which would have been a perfect defense for Senate Republicans to say, you're impeaching him for something that the special counsel has already asked and answered. And so they went for something else. They went for the Zelensky phone call. And so that is what it is. But no, Hunter Biden's not the president. Bonnie Singleton, our president has been lying to the American people for a long time. Something terribly wrong with him. Jeff 3, Barth, they need to start from the top all the way down. They all need to go. Nixon Sela, yes, they need to do that. Let's see here. Cynthia Warren Shockley, the July 31, 2023, Devon Archer told the House Oversight Committee that his former business partner, Hunter Biden, was selling, quote, the illusion of access to his father, according to a source familiar with the closed-door interview. We don't need sources familiar with the closed-door interview. We have the transcript. We were just looking at the transcript. Yes, they were selling the Hunter Biden brand But in this case, there actually was a phone call that Archer believes happened to Joe Biden in December 4, 2015 at the Burisma board meeting in Dubai, United Arab Emirates. It's not one or the other. Yes, they were selling the illusion of it. The source also reiterated that Archer provided no evidence connecting Joe Biden to any of his son's foreign business dealings. He provided, again, it's hearsay because he's saying that, Vadim, the CFO of Burisma, while they're in the car on the way back or the day afterwards to the hotel, said Vadim Poskarski told him that it had been Joe Biden on the phone call that had gone to Washington, D.C. Now, would they need, I think, something more substantial than that if Archer's not actually a witness to it? So, you don't need to rely on 2-day-old accounts of the transcript. The transcript is the links in the description to my story. And then when you click in there, you'll see that there's actually a hyperlink on Daily Torch to the transcript of everything that Archer testified to. It's not one or the other. So you can try to characterize certain parts of it and say that disproves everything. It's like, no, you still have to account for what's stated here. Now, I'm noting that it's hearsay. There could be some flaws to the House's case if they don't have an eyewitness. But I think there's a lot of smoke here to continue investigating, certainly probable cause. And when they elevate to an impeachment inquiry, they can depose witnesses further and compel testimony. And I think that's where this is going. Joe Meek, arrest all of the Biden family in prison time. That would be unconstitutional. The Justice Department cannot arrest the president. The executive branch can't prosecute itself. We have a unitary executive under Article 2. That's in the Constitution. Read your Constitution. Nixon, Silla, they need to start from the top. Bonnie Singleton, Trump lost money serving our country, and Biden makes money along with the rest of his family. That's the allegation. Let's see. Nixon, Silla, this sounds funny. Let's see. Melissa Collins, I'm sure Biden knew why Hunter Biden was doing it, and he agreed so he could get his money too. It was worked out behind closed doors. Well, that phone call was behind closed doors. So Devon Archer is aware of that. There was a phone call that they needed help from Washington, D.C., that had to do with the Ukrainian government's investigations of Burisma and specifically CEO Mykola Zlochevsky. But then they step away to take the call, and it's Hunter Biden, Zlochevsky, and then CFO Vadim Poskarski who are on the phone call with whoever they called in Washington, D.C. Poskarski later tells Archer, oh yeah, that was Joe Biden on the call. Was it really Joe Biden on the call? We don't know. Let's see. Kenny Flournoy, damn, if this wasn't a quid pro quo. So it seems like probable cause, right? So the House can probably move forward with what House Speaker Kevin McCarthy is calling for an impeachment inquiry. Mary Bonanno, it certainly is. Robert Hardy, if we had a real DOJ, FBI, IRS, the Bidens would be in prison right now. Again, you cannot arrest the sitting president of the United States. It's unconstitutional. The executive branch cannot prosecute itself. So you're expecting the attorney general to, go to, it would have been like if Robert Mueller had gone to the Trump White House and arrested him. But they actually issued, they upheld longstanding Justice Department policy that, no, that's unconstitutional. And so you have a unitary executive under Article 2. It cannot prosecute itself. And the framers envisioned a process not where you would have factions in the executive branch fighting against one another. They ruled out having two consuls like you had in ancient Rome because they didn't want more than one person thinking that they were in charge of the country. Instead, they outlined a process for impeachment. That is Congress's responsibility. That's what's happening right now. And so we want to observe the constitutional process for dealing with abuses of power by the chief executive. That's the president of the United States. That's Article 1. That's Congress. And that's what's going to happen. Let's see. Mary Bonanno, Trump donated his presidential salary. That's true. He didn't want the money. Billy Brooks, CCP Joe FJB. What's that mean? Let's see. Mike McNally, you should be in prison, scumbag. Okay. Billy Brooks, FJB. What's that mean? Let's see here. Totally worthless individual daily. Okay. McNally, absolutely right. Okay, a lot of repeat comments here. Let's move on. Vincent Chipola and Trump's entire family were on payroll while he was president. Jared and Ivanka took almost $2 billion from Saudi Arabia. Well, if there's an allegation that they were accepting bribes or something like that, I think that would be people should testify to that. If there are no allegations of that, and there's a lot of innuendo about Hunter Biden prior to Devon Archer's testimony, prior to the release of this FD 1023. And so it's easy to kind of, at the time say, oh, well, where's the substance to this? Now we're starting to get some of the substance. Trump's not in office anymore. Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner, they're not advisors to the president anymore. So I don't know if that matters right now. It's Congress's job not to look into Ivanka and Jared and Donald Trump, but to look at the sitting president of the United States. That's where their oversight has to be. Let's see here. Bill Anderson, you're a liar, says he's calling Vincent a liar. Back and forth. Okay, so Kathy Harns Batsold, they actually worked, Vincent, unlike Biden's family. So then there's a little jabbing around here. Robert Hardy wants to defend this as well, or go against this. Is that something the corrupt media told you? Now that's a conspiracy theory. Yeah, billions of dollars. It might be an exaggeration. 2 billion. Yeah, so that's exactly what Kathy wants to know. What about the 2 billion? How do you prove that? And then Christine Magelson, so you guys are talking to yourself. I'm glad you're having fun in the chat. I'll try to keep it on topic here. Eugene Pickle Sr., let's get started on impeachment. What are they waiting for? I think they're waiting. They need to get this testimonies. They need to have the facts. They need to have all the facts at their disposal to do with this if they're going to move forward with an impeachment. Because once they vote to it, you have to get the inquiries going. You have to get witnesses deposed. They have to compel testimony in some cases if the witnesses are adversarial. So there's, I think, a lot of steps. What are they waiting for? Just impeach him already. It's like, well, there were members of Congress calling for Biden to be impeached over his border policies. And that might have not been the strongest grounds with which to raise an impeachment. So just because a member says, oh, there's some reason to impeach, doesn't mean you go through it with it immediately. You have to build the case, and it better be unassailable. It better be high crimes and misdemeanors or bribes. Or something like that, because that's what the Constitution states is the predicate for an impeachment. And if they have evidence, if it's circumstantial evidence, if there's hearsay involved, they have to take all of that into account to determine whether they have enough evidence to convict. But if they believe there's probable cause, they should go forward, and they can deal with whether the evidence is sufficient enough at the trial in the Senate. I think that in this case, the House's role is to kind of like, oh, is there probable cause? And then the Senate's role is, do we convict or do we find or do we acquit? Every single president who has ever been impeached has been acquitted. And so in this case, I think that would be 95% likely, unless House Republicans can produce a smoking gun that proves the bribery that's being alleged in the 1023, or some other corruption, some other high crime and misdemeanor, some other bribery. But I think this is what they're going to be looking at. Let's see, back and forth. Leonard Meyer, FJB and company, they do nothing but lie. What's that mean? Let's see here. Vincent Chipola wants to keep looking at Jared and Ivanka. It's not the topic of the stream, so let's skip all those comments. Back and forth. All right, we got to the bottom of the chat. I thank you again. Hunter Biden, he called Washington, D.C., according to Devon Archer, with Mykola Zlochevsky, and he's the CEO of Burisma, on the phone, and also CFO Vadim Posarski. So then the call goes to DC. They leave the room. It had to do with the investigations by Ukraine into Burisma, the company that Hunter Biden was on the board of directors with. That's what we know. And then Archer says that Posarski told him later that Hunter Biden had called his dad That's the commentary. This is Robert Romano, Vice President of Public Policy with Americans for Limited Government, dailytorch.com. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications, and have a good day.